Hey, book besties. Welcome to More Than a Book Club podcast. I'm your host, Lena.
And I'm your other host, LJ. And today we're going to be talking about it's a new release, right? Newish release?
Yes. And this is Caro Claire Burke's, debut novel, Yesteryear. And I got to see her whenever she came to Interrobang Books in Dallas. She seems like a super sweet lady, and she said to remember this book is satirical. So as I was reading it, I was reminding myself that. And funny thing, I went to the pool on Thursday with my daughter, and there were 3 people reading this book at
Are you
the pool.
serious?
Yes. I was like, this is crazy. And one girl stopped me and she was like, I haven't started reading it yet. Is it good? My book club is reading it. And I was like, oh, so is mine. But okay, so what were your first impressions of this book?
Well, first, before we do that, let me read the little blurb from online.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
Yesteryear by Caro Claire Burke is a debut novel about a trad wife social media influencer who wakes up in the 1850s, forced to live the harsh traditional life she only curated online, leading to a dark satirical thriller about fame, faith, and the performance of womanhood. The story alternates between her struggle in the past and her life as an influencer, questioning if it's a hoax, a reality show, or something else entirely. It's a biting social commentary that has been praised as a Good Morning America book club pick and a New York Times bestseller. So my initial thoughts, when I first started reading it, I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. This is so relevant because we've got an influencer mom. And it kind of defines it there, but a trad wife is for traditional wife. And I feel like first we have, what did we call it? Like crunchy mamas was like the first stage of that when our kids were little. And then it just kind of progressed more and more.
Yeah. Crunchy moms, I more think of like hippie-ish, I guess.
That's true.
When you say trad mom, I think of very conservative religious values, subservient to the man.
Okay,
but
that's true.
possibly
You're right.
also has some of these crunchy mom things that they do, if that makes sense.
Which we see that because she also is like, we're going to have everything homemade and all that stuff. So there is that element, but you're right. Crunchy mamas would probably be insulted. I'm sorry, crunchy mamas, that I said that trad wife was a synonym. It's not. I'm so sorry. I would not want to be called a trad wife. I'm also not a crunchy mama, but I think if I were to be called one, I'd rather be called a crunchy mama than a trad wife. So, and I say I don't want to be called a crunchy mama because I'm not all natural. I don't cook. Like, I'm the worst. I'd be the worst crunchy mama. Like, I'm just saying. Anyway, I'm going to stop digging my hole and take my foot out of my mouth now. But anyway, yeah, what were your initial thoughts?
So I went into this after going to see her and was so excited to read this.
Mm-hmm.
Initial thoughts as I was starting it, I was like, this is not quite what I expected. Like, she goes and has this past because it goes, so there's a couple of points of view here. It goes into her past as she's growing up, as she's meeting her husband. And then it also has a more present day narrative. And then also there's the past where she's in the 1850s.
Yes.
And I had a hard time believing that she went from where she was as teenager, young adult, until she married her husband. Like that, it felt unnatural. So that was my first thought.
It did. Yeah.
It felt like a leap. And there was no intermediary, I guess. So there was no middle ground where she was navigating this change. It's just she changed. But maybe that's kind of how... I don't know how influencers work. I have never been an influencer. I don't know if they suddenly wake up one day and are like, this is what I'm going to do. And yeah, so she went from being, I don't know how you would even describe it. I was thinking of like the sects of, what do you call them? Not Mormon, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Is that right?
Kind of. Yeah.
That like they show on TV and stuff, these sects that are
extremists.
Off in, yes, the extremists.
Yeah, the extreme. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, it's not the Mormons.
Yeah, no, I'm like, I have good friends. Like, I have good friends.
So do I.
And I'm like, no, they're nothing. Like, yeah, it's like the kind of the groups that the Mormon church do not recognize as actually being Church of Latter-day Saints. Like, these are the offshoots. And we don't even really know. They're like their own, they're like their own religion. They're like kind of become their own cult.
And she
So,
doesn't ever say what her religion is, but it's very traditional values, which, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just
yeah.
different than what
Yeah.
I have. Skirts are a certain length, clothing is a certain way. She doesn't ever cut her hair.
Mhm.
Just very different. But then she gets, I think it's a full ride to Harvard.
Yeah.
And she moves from kind of rural Idaho, I believe it is,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
Harvard, which is a big leap. And she goes
Yeah.
from having a very close relationship with her mother and sister to now they're across the country and
Mhm.
she's trying to navigate this big change. And, I kind of went beyond my first thoughts, but it was a hard book to read, and I had to remind myself that it was satirical because as it goes, she has changed and morphed from this shy, very private person that is scared of the world kind of to
Yeah.
navigating Harvard, and then you see on the other side where she's an influencer and she's cursing in her mind, but then being like, oh, sorry, Jesus.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, it's hard. There's a disconnect between the person that she was and the person that she is now. So
But
I
I
don't know how
don't
you
think
felt
there
about that.
is. I don't think there is. I think she got better at, that was the whole thing. Like, she got better at portraying what she wanted the world to see. And that made her think that that was who she was, even though it wasn't. If we remember from the very beginning when she was going to Harvard, her mom said, be nice. And we're all just like, what a weird thing for them to say. But then as we see throughout the book, that, yeah, she's not very nice, actually. And
No,
I don't know. It's such an interesting thing, but I agree. There were some, which I get it. It's satire, so of course it's not all going to make sense logically. But yeah, it's like we had that and I guess we could think about this too. This is first person, right? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
So
Yes.
we don't know what she was lying to us, the audience. Like,
True.
look, we're going to get a little meta here, even more meta, because from the beginning, she acts like this is her life. And then she goes to Harvard because she was going to get away from that, but then she didn't really want to. And then she's too snobby for everyone, including the church group that she ultimately ends up with. And
Yes.
then and then that's how she meets her husband.
And even then, she felt like she was better than
Yeah.
everyone else. Like you said, snobby,
She
but
did.
she felt, what's the word, pretentious, but without the
Mhm.
money or the clout to back it up.
Yes. Yes. And I thought it was so interesting, like reading, like I feel like this was such a good, I don't know, making fun of how some people in these religious things, how like they met a couple times and they go on a date. Then the next date, they talk about marriage and then like basically got engaged like right after that. And I'm
Yes,
like,
real
I
quick.
feel like that's like a dig at the Duggars. I feel like in
Mhm.
some ways a dig at all these other, uber religious conservative things. Now, I will say I went to a very liberal school actually, but then there also was the Christian group and I was in the Christian group, but I am a Christian, but I think I am more open-minded than the typical we're going to all lump together church group, which is fine. Like, you worship your way, I worship my way. And I will say that I knew a lot of people that were number one, waiting till marriage. Number two, they might have long term relationships. And a few of them, it's like they had met in church in high school and they weren't engaged yet, but they knew they were going to get married. Like they knew. And some of them, as soon as they graduated college, boom, they got married. They got engaged their senior year, got married right after. And now, unlike her, they weren't big affairs. But still, like I went to a few weddings where the wedding was in the church, the reception was in like the parish hall or whatever. So I saw that firsthand, which I will say, as someone who had not grown up around that, like I grew up in the church and everything, but I was in Dallas. I was in the Park Cities and it was not like that. Now, a lot of the people did get married right out of college to their high school sweethearts. There's actually quite a few that are still together, which is really cool to see on Facebook because I'm like, dang, that's a long time. But it wasn't the same situation. I mean, these are the ones having the 400 people wedding and stuff. These were really wealthy families marrying into other really wealthy families, kind of doing that. But yeah, it's just, I thought that was so funny seeing that part where they do that and then they get in the marriage and they're actually not really compatible in any way.
At all.
No.
And the female main character is Natalie Heller Mills, At the time that we meet her, she's 32 years old and 6 months
Hmm.
pregnant with her sixth child,
Yes.
which is bananas. And then she's living on a farm in Idaho. So she's back in Idaho. Her husband, Caleb, is the youngest son of a senator. And I can't remember the senator's from California or Idaho.
I think it was California because I think he lives
Okay.
in California.
So he's a California senator, very traditional values. And this is he's having his third presidential run whenever
Hmm.
we're introduced to all of them. So
Yes.
that's kind of the setting. And also their wedding, you were talking about the big affairs. Her wedding was a 400-person event. And I don't think any of them were really her friends per se. It
No.
was the dad's friends and influencer, like that sphere. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like an intimate wedding by any means. And I remember her mom asking her, like, is this what you really want?
Hmm.
And she was like, yes, this is exactly what I want. And at the time, her sister, who we meet, trying to think, Abigail's her sister. And Abigail married her high school sweetheart and started having kids right away.
Hmm.
And Natalie judged Abigail for how she was living her life, how she was married to a man who she thought was mean, didn't respect Abigail, and Abigail barely graduated high school, like all this stuff that she barely had
Hmm.
lived before she started getting married and having kids.
Yeah.
And then Natalie gets married, and she thinks that because her husband comes from a wealthy family, that everything's going to be better. And I don't know if it necessarily was in
No.
any sense of the
When
word.
it's like, it, throughout it all, like, honestly, do we ever even know what she actually wants?
I don't know if
All she
she
cares about
knows what
is
she actually
no, I
wants.
don't think she does. And I think that's kind of, I mean, I think that's also another message throughout the book that, this put out your fake life on social media and then you don't know what's real and what's not. And I think that we see that with her, I mean, very exaggeratedly, but I don't know. When it first started out and we find out she has two nannies and then she's got a producer and all this stuff, like that did not seem that crazy to me. And then when we find out like how it became all of that stuff and then the producer being the last one to come on the scene and the producer being like, I thought you did this all alone. And it made me realize too, like, I mean, I don't assume that. I guess, so I am definitely not an influencer, but I did grow one account pretty large. And then I was in groups with other people in the faith community. They weren't groups about building your audience, but like we were in the same group and seeing similar stuff and knowing the ins and out and knowing that a lot of people, they're not doing it by themselves, or people even online occasionally revealing, like, oh, our babysitter, you're like, where are their kids? They never with their kids. And so to me, the way that Shannon responded and was just like, this house is smaller. You have, how many employees do you have? And I feel like maybe I just have done enough research or been exposed enough that I thought, of course, that's normal. But I guess there are still people that if you haven't had an interest in that, because that's part of the thing is like, I was so fascinated with all of this a few years ago of how to build an audience and what different people were doing. So none of this is new to me, but I can see how someone just watching and are like, oh, they just do this on their own. But I hadn't really thought of it. Now I'm going to start thinking about, although like I follow all these farms. I am obsessed with this one farm. Her name is Katie. I don't remember. I should look her up. I am obsessed with Katie and she shows her mini horses and her goats and all this stuff. And I'm obsessed with her. I'll look her up in a minute when you're talking. But, of course, I'm like, obviously they have to have a bajillion employees. There's no way they can have all these horses and goats by herself.
They become influencers, or she becomes an influencer. At this point, she is married. Everything is kind of falling apart. And she
Yeah.
goes to her father-in-law, who's the senator, and is like, help. This is before she's an influencer. She's like, we need to
Yeah.
get him a job because her husband, Caleb, basically is being an overgrown teenager. Once they get married, he doesn't want to work. She gets pregnant. He doesn't want to work. And so they end up moving back in with her in-laws. And at some point, her father-in-law and her talk, and she's like, we need to get him something to do because he is not developing. And the father-in-law was like, oh, well, we thought maybe getting married to you would be the thing that made him develop. So she talks to her father-in-law, talks him into giving them $5 million so that for 3 years they can run this farm. And Caleb, her husband, has talked about wanting to run a farm and this being his idea, his dream idea of being a farmer. And then they go and actually do it,
Or his
and
dream
he
of being a
sucks at it.
cowboy.
A
His dream of being
cowboy,
a
yes.
cowboy, yeah. She's like, I can work with this dream.
Yes. And she's like, okay, he's trainable. I can train him. And basically she said he's trainable to pretend. And I thought that was interesting because they are all pretending. Not only Natalie and Caleb, but also Natalie's mom. She has some secrets that she's kept from the family and is pretending to be a certain way. Her sister Abigail is pretending to be in a happy marriage. The in-laws, the senator, is pretending to have some of these values that he doesn't necessarily have. He's just trying to get a base to get elected. And her mother-in-law, it turns out, takes pills. Like,
Yeah, a lot. And
is kind
drinks
of an
alcohol with
addict.
them. Yeah.
And that's how she copes with getting through the day. So they're all hiding these things and presenting themselves very differently than what they actually are,
Mm-hmm.
and the pretending. And I think her mom even tells her at one point, because she's struggling with postpartum depression after her first child and not really connecting with the baby. And she's like, this isn't what I thought it would be. And her mom's like, well, I used to just pretend there were people watching. And that's how I got through the day. And so I would just pretend that there were people watching and basically judging how she was as a mother. And so Natalie's like, okay, that's what I'll do. So she pretends that people are watching her and feels like she has to put on being a good wife and a good mother. And she even says that, like, there's online Natalie and there's not online Natalie. And online
Yeah.
Natalie has to act a certain way and do things a certain way, but that's not how offline Natalie works.
No, and
So,
she even struggles. Like, she freaks out about seeing people because she
yes,
doesn't know how to do that without it almost being scripted. Like, it has to be
yes,
scripted. And I about died, like, when she ran into that lady in
Target.
the grocery in the or grocery store. Not that one, the grocery store, and she left the baby in the car.
I thought it was the Target one where she left the baby in the car. Either way, she had left a little baby into the car, and
In
this
the
was
car.
like a fan,
Yeah.
and it
That
went
saw
all
it.
downhill.
Well, and that was before, like, that was before she had hired the producer. Like, she had gotten big, but that's when she's like, okay, I need help, kind of like. And she did that course or something, or
Yes.
whatever.
I think at that point she was an influencer, but she didn't have the help that she needed, didn't have the nannies. And
Mm-hmm.
there was one point where they talk about she was making all this food for her family,
Mm-hmm.
but she would often forget to feed the kids because
Yes.
she was busy making this food. And so supper wouldn't get done until 9 o'clock. The kids
Yeah.
were starving. She hadn't fed them.
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
literally all for show. She wasn't doing this to feed and nourish her family. It was
No.
all for show.
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting. And by the time that we do meet her, she is pregnant with her sixth baby.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's kind of thrust into the 1850s.
Yes.
And she wakes up. She's no longer pregnant. She has a house that looks like hers, but is not hers. A husband
Mm-hmm.
that looks like hers, but is not hers. Like,
But
she
older.
calls him,
Like,
he's older.
old Caleb.
She calls him old Caleb.
Yeah.
And then children that look like hers, but are not hers.
Yeah.
And they're different ages. In the current state, her oldest is 12, and then kind of goes down from there.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever she comes to in the 1850s, she has a daughter who's, I feel like, a few years older than her oldest in the present day, like 14,
Yeah.
15.
Something like that. Yeah. I don't think they tell us, but yeah, the things that happen, yes.
Kind of feel like
Yes.
that. And in the olden days, I call it the olden days because I'm like, what do you call that?
Yeah.
It was one of those things where all the kids were like, oh, mom is acting like not like herself again. And they just kind of accepted that. And when I was first reading this, I was like, oh, has she come into the past before? Or have other
Yeah.
people come into this past life? Like, what is going on here? Because I honestly
Yeah.
didn't know. And so I was like, okay, is this woman almost being like possessed is what I was wondering. Like, people come in and
Yeah.
out of her body, and are shocked. She's shocked by what's around her and has to learn to live with that. And I was like, oh, maybe once she
Mhm.
learns to live with it, she'll be back in the present day.
Right.
And so it was an interesting juxtaposition of not only what's happening with the family in the past, but also the family in the current state where her daughter has started to question things
Yes.
and is becoming a little bit more knowledgeable about the world. And in the olden
Mhm.
days, her oldest is basically running the whole household. And it's like, oh, Mama's sick again. She needs to go rest. And
Yeah.
she's not herself. And so the 14-year-old is running everything. And the mom's kind of
Including the
crazy is
mom and,
what.
like, bossing the mom
Yes,
around.
yes. So it was very interesting to see how in the present day, the mom had control over literally everything, every detail of their lives. And in the past, she had zero control.
Yeah. It's just yeah. It's so
It was very,
interesting.
very interesting. And then when she's at Harvard, her roommate is Rena. And
Mhm.
we also kind of follow Rena's path through all of this because she views Rena as this awful person who comes to college and is there to party and drink and meet guys, and she's not going to be successful at all.
Or she is.
And
Like, she was like, she's gonna go the business route, and then by the time she finally wants to have kids, she's not gonna be able to, and then her husband is not gonna want her anymore, and he's gonna, like, have a younger girl or whatever, like, all these things, and when she finally gets that, then it's all gonna be awful, and I think she she was being competitive with her. She wanted to prove that her life was better than
mhm. And not only valuable, but better. I think that's, like you said,
yes.
the comparison, the competitiveness. And
Mhm.
she thought she was going to be a sad, lonely old woman. And even whenever we see Rena graduate and get internships and struggle with the job market, Natalie's like, this is, I proved to myself this is what's going to happen to her. And she's just fulfilling
Mhm.
the prophecy that I set for her. And
Mhm.
in reality, as Rena goes along, we kind of learn different things about her. I don't want to give anything away, but it's really Natalie who has all of these things. The
Yeah.
judgmentalness of it kind of comes back to her, is reflected back on her. But
Yeah, 100%.
it
Definitely.
was it was interesting. And once they start running the farm, I was
Mhm.
laughing at how bad they are because she thought it was going to be a cattle ranch, and that's what she had pitched it as to her father-in-law. And then her husband's like, no, you know what they do to the cattle? They basically, like, they
Yeah.
kill them. I can't do
Yeah.
that. And I
Yeah.
was like, that's hilarious because he is just such a wimp throughout. Not that I think that how they kill
Yeah.
cattle is right,
Right,
but
right, right.
I also feel like he was just so not unmanly. I hate to use that word, but she thought that he was going to be this manly, super masculine. She was going to be subservient to him, kind of what her values stated.
Yeah.
And then it turned
Yeah.
out he wasn't the man that she thought he was.
No.
He didn't want to take charge of the ranch. He decided they were going to grow vegetables, and there was no market for that. There was no money in that. And
Mhm.
she's like, we have to figure this out before we get cut off from my father-in-law. And they do have a cow, and they went through like 4 cows. And the first time, because the cow died, and they're like,
Yeah.
well, what do we do with that? And the smaller animals, they had just dug holes and buried them. But they're like, what do you do with a cow? So they just had no idea what they were doing. And her husband, meanwhile, falls down all of these rabbit holes of conspiracy theories and just craziness. Like,
Yes.
it was
Yes.
extreme. And I think that was the satirical part that she was showing. Like,
Mhm.
the extremes of both of these people, the influencer world and her husband's conspiracy theorist. And that's kind of how she gets popular, is
Yeah, because
one
she
of,
has these traditional values, and between either the people that love her and the people that hate her, she's got both. But what I think is funny too, she played on his conspiracy theories and she added to them to get her
mhm,
way. Like, she didn't want
yes,
her kids in public school. So she's like, oh my gosh, this is. And of course, if you search the right thing on the internet, you're going to find confirmation bias everywhere.
yes. And it
Everywhere.
wasn't
You
that
can,
she didn't want her kids in public school. It was that her husband was like, I was made to be a kindergarten teacher. And
that's
she's
right.
like,
Yes.
no, you're not.
No.
You're not being a teacher. And then
Yeah,
she was
I
like, do you
forgot
even
about
know
that,
what they're
yeah.
teaching in those schools? And that's
Yeah.
whenever he falls down that rabbit hole. But the reason she got famous was one of his chat room buddies turned out to be, he kind of sounded like a neo-Nazi because
Yes,
they
because
were
he's
talking
talking about
about,
Aryans. They're talking about Aryans, like, this good
and I was like,
Aryan wife,
oh,
and it's like, I
but
don't
he
like
talks
that.
about her and then she gains hundreds of thousands of followers after he mentions their farm and her
Yeah,
account. And that's kind of how she gets famous, as
it is.
not through the right mean. I don't know. It was very interesting. And that she didn't care. She was just excited to have the followers. It
I know.
wasn't necessarily who they were. It was
Mm-mm.
what they represented to her. Like, how could they benefit her?
No, it's true. And then once that happens, then her father-in-law is all of a sudden like, oh, I can utilize this to my advantage and starts putting pressure on her to make like a post supporting him. And it just gets crazier from that. But I want to tell you, I looked up a couple of accounts that I wanted to share. So Katie Van Slyke is the one with the horses, the mini horses and the goats. And she's so cute. Like she will rock the baby horses to sleep and
Aw.
sing to them. It's adorable, and they're all sassy. She's sassy. I love all the stories she shares, and anyway, all the videos. She's really cute if you want to follow her. And then there's another girl that this made me think of. It's a girl who reads letters that she wrote as an evangelical teen to her future husband, and she's like, "I'm no longer evangelical, but I have the husband." And he like goes behind her like this and like waves, and then she's like, "And I have the letters." And so he draws one out of a bag, and she reads them to him, and they're so funny. And it reminds me of like she not this type of style of life, but she was like preparing for a future husband, which in all honesty, I think that is adorable. I think that's really sweet. But they've made it into like their funny thing that they do. And that it just made me think of this as how like the opposite end, like if you're like, I was raised in this type of situation and I escape it. And then, but I still have some remnants that I can share for fun. But her name is Fabi Gale. So Fabigail. And she and her husband are really cute. So should totally go check them out. But this also made me think of someone we all know, maybe, if you perhaps remember Ruby Frankie, the
Oh, yeah.
momfluencer. And then she got real crazy and like basically starved two of her children. One of them escaped from like this lady that she had become best friends with who did all these online courses that were uber religious and controlling and all this stuff. And did you read Sherry Frankie's book? Yeah.
I
Or
heard
listen to it?
daughters.
Yeah, the Cherry's the daughter. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I was
Ruby's
like,
our
I can't
Sherry.
remember who. Yeah.
Yeah. I have
And
it, but I haven't read it yet.
I had never heard of these people before. And
It's crazy.
reading the daughter's account, and I read it for a book club.
Mhm.
And it was just like, oh my gosh, like I had never heard of this lady, but she was very uber religious. I think she was whatever they currently call the Mormon Church in Utah. And I guess that it was a very big thing in Utah to be a momfluencer for a while. I don't know if it still is, but that was like a big thing. And so she had become a momfluencer basically and put her children
Mhm.
on the camera, even though they weren't necessarily wanting to. And then whenever they did act out, she would punish them and punish them severely. And
Mhm.
they had to perform basically. And if they didn't perform right, she would starve them, she would hit them, and all these different things. She ended up going to jail, but it was a very weird relationship she had with this other woman
Mhm.
who kind of came in
Jody Hildebrandt. That's her name.
and it
The
almost
other
was like
woman.
they had, I don't know if they had a sexual relationship,
Yeah,
but
we don't
it
know, but
almost
it
felt like that because the husband, I think at one point they were sharing a room and the husband was just kind of off doing his own thing. And that was one of the things in the book. It's like, okay, where's the dad in all this? Like, this is happening to these
Mhm.
kids, and he just kind of seems to be absent from it all.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if he was even there or if he had at that point moved somewhere
So
else.
he was involved in all of the courses and everything. And basically, he was told by both of them that if he wanted to save himself, like morally and everything, he needed to go away and that not live with them, not speak to them, and they would be in contact. And he bought in so deeply that he had to kind of, when all this stuff broke and they got him and he had no idea what had been going on with his children, he, like, was flabbergasted. Like, he had no idea because he had been cut off from them, so he had no idea what was going on, and the 2 oldest, including Sherry, the daughter that wrote the book, they were cut she had disowned them, like, cut them off. They had no access to their siblings or anything either, so it was a mess. Still there, I mean, these poor children. These poor children.
And that's
It's
not the
awful.
only instance of this. What was that movie or a documentary that came out? Smile and Be Nice, or
E Keep sweet, pray, obey, or something like that.
yes, it was
Keep
something like
sweet,
that.
pray, yeah.
But it was all about just doing whatever you were told as a woman and
Mhm.
keep sweet, pray, and obey. And that was what your role was. That was the only thing you had going for you. And some of these people, it just breaks your heart that they're living like this. And
Yeah.
seeing these children that are in the book, you're like, what are they going to grow up to be? And you see her oldest daughter, Clementine, start to like question things. And she's asking her mom, what is a trad wife? Is that
Mhm.
what you are? Like, what does that mean? What does that entail? And her younger kids, they just, go along with everything. But her daughter is starting to question everything. And it makes me wonder, is she eventually going to be cut off because she does not want to be filmed? And what does that look like when the rest of the family is there, but not her? It made me think, this is weird because they have nothing in common, but the Osbournes,
Yeah.
whenever they had their show, and this was Kelly,
Kelly Osbourne, Jack
what's
Osbourne, Ozzy
what's the
Osbourne, Sherry
mom's name?
Osbourne, Sharon.
Sharon. Yeah. And there was another sister
Yeah, that refused to participate.
refused to participate. And I always wonder what that was like for her because
Yeah.
the rest of her family became super famous and she chose to be private. She chose that for
Mhm.
herself. But what was that like? People didn't even know she existed, basically.
Right.
And it was kind of not, she wasn't cut off, but while they were
No,
filming
but
everything, she probably didn't have much of a relationship with her
mhm.
family. And I know this is totally different circumstances because it's Ozzy Osbourne and a trad wife influencer, but kind of the same thing whenever you're in that sphere of people watching you and you are censored in some senses.
Yeah.
Even in this book, she talks about her son Stetson and Samuel. She shows the sweet sides of them and doesn't show them fighting or
Yeah.
all of this. She keeps it, she's like, "Oh, my kids are perfect," basically. And people think that. They're like,
Yeah.
how are your kids so well behaved?" And
And
it's
she's
because
like,
she's
"Thank
not showing
you."
it. Yeah.
Yeah, because she's not showing it, and she's like, "They don't really wanna see that. They don't really wanna know that." And in some ways, she's not wrong. Like, you know, it's entertainment, and some people, yes, like, we wanna connect with people, but people like that, we don't expect to see that. We have it in our heads that they are just this, like, delightful, perfect little family, and, unless they're showing that side from the beginning, we want to believe that they're as good as they seem. Like, we want it to be, well, some of us. I want it to be true. I'm an optimist. I'm like, yes, even though I know that my kids aren't perfect and I love them more than anything, but, and we know kids are kids, but
And I
still,
think
I mean, I
that's
could admit it.
a big social commentary here on social media in general is you don't see
Mhm.
all the things. Even with your
Mm-mm.
friends, even with the
No.
people that you know in real life, you're only seeing the curated version of their life. You're not seeing the
Yeah.
fights and the drama behind the scenes, the marriage, the kids' issues. You're not seeing any of that. And this was just on a whole other level because she really is just showing this perfect life. And it
Mhm.
makes me look at all these people and you have they always say, whoever they is, but
Yeah.
whenever you're looking at these people, you're feeling inadequate. And
Mhm.
that's part of the social media issue is that it brings out all these inadequacies. And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
if only I was a better person. I mean, in this instance where she's a Christian mother, you're thinking if I was more Christian or loved God more, or like as a Christian, I know, I don't go to church regularly. Like I
Mhm.
haven't been to church in years, but that
Yeah.
doesn't, in my mind, make me any less of a Christian. But
No.
she has this whole idea of she's literally talking to God. And
Yeah. And he's
God is
talking
telling
back.
her stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes me be like, what do these people tell themselves whenever they are influencers like this? Whenever what's going on in their heads to
Yeah.
make this seem perfect?
Mhm.
And I know there's some influencers that I have followed that they were running influencers, and one of them presented this perfect marriage, perfect kids. Look how my family supports me running. Look how we run together. And then all of a sudden, I look up one day and she's divorced. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how did that happen? Because clearly
Yeah.
things weren't presented that way. But that's kind of the influencer world is you don't present all these things. And I had been thinking like, man, she has a family that runs with her. How lucky. She's
Yeah.
nursing babies and then going for runs. She would
Yeah.
show eating all this food and then being super skinny. And you're like, how does she do all this? And the fact is that she wasn't. There were things that were suffering in the
Mhm.
meantime. So,
Well, I think I know we always say like because like I mean, we've all at various times been like, "Oh no, don't compare yourself to whoever," even if it's like someone like they're just showing the highlight reels. Which, if they were showing more than that, then we would be judging them for putting all their drama out there too. So it's kind of
yes,
like a double edged sword.
a
But I do
double
think it
edged.
is.
Yeah.
And so what's really funny, like I remember one of my friends before she got divorced, and I knew she was struggling in her marriage and she was posting all this stuff about how much she loved her husband and everything. So I've seen it firsthand that way. And then also it was funny because like I didn't really post much of my family or my ex-husband. It'd be like if we had family pictures or something. But all of a sudden I post a date night thing. And then what do you know? A week later, I think I announced we were getting divorced, or a week and a half later. And obviously people behind the scenes like Lena knew what was going on because she's a close friend of mine. But there were other people that I had been close with at various times, or coworkers and stuff. And after I announced it, and then when I saw one of them who I adore, she was like, I was wondering when you posted that date night thing, she was like, just something in my brain was like, something's not right. And I was like, that's so crazy. I was like, but it's totally true. I totally did the thing where I'm like, we're going out on a date because we were. And that was us trying to repair what ultimately was not repairable, which is fine. We've both moved on. We're both great. So I'm like, I've done it. I've done the thing. And now I just, we have fun on like Bookstagram. I have like a
Yes.
teacher account. We do it like that. But again, none of those places are where we're like, we're just doing the fun stuff. It's like a fun hobby, not a like, here's my life per se. But I
And
love this book because of just the way it's very well done. Also, there's a lot of like, I don't know how to explain it. I gave it 4 stars, but anyway, continue. Your turn. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I was going to talk, I did give it 3 stars,
Hmm.
3.5 on Storygraph, because I was like, it's more than three. I don't know if I would call
Yeah.
it four, but
Yeah.
talking about social media, a lot of the influencers I follow now are big
Hmm.
into the non-aesthetic. So they're trying to show real life. They're trying to be like one of my favorite follows as a book reader is Gillian McAllister. I almost said Gillian
Yes.
Anderson, but that is the X-Files
Different.
lady, but Gillian McAllister, and she's an author. She has several books out, but she'll literally show, here's what I thought it would look like to be an author in my office where I thought I would write, and here's where I'm actually writing. And it's like kids' toys everywhere, dishes in the sink, her hair's not done, she's
Hmm.
writing in her bed on a deadline, the dog is going crazy, like all these things. And I find that more relatable than
Yes.
these pristine houses, because I look at those and I'm like, I'm never going to have that. Even after my kids leave, I'm the messy one. Like, I don't know if you've seen that. It's a reel where the other wives are talking about their husbands leaving clothes on the floor and doing stuff, and the one wife is like, "Yeah, totally." And she's realizing that she's the messy husband.
I mean, I feel like
That's what I feel like.
that's kind of, I'm the messy. So here's the thing. I like to have a very neat, like living area, but then bedroom and closet, bathroom, I'm going to be a mess. I have to have my spot to be a mess. I just do.
Hot mess. And I
Hot
will
mess.
say, when I was a teenager, my room, like, you could not see the floor.
Yeah.
And
Same.
when I got
Same.
a car in college, like, the back seat became my trash seat. Like, that
Okay.
was the trash can.
That's what the back of my car looks like right now because into school year, I still haven't cleaned it out. I just would throw, like, there's cardigans back there. There's like Diet Coke bottles. There's random stuff, papers that I'm like, books. Like, The back seat, I think there's even a coffee cup, like a ceramic one that I finished the coffee in the car, and then I needed the cup holder, so I just put it in the back seat on the floor. Like, that was just the other day, too.
And I feel like I've gotten better as I've gotten older, but also my
Yes.
house has gotten bigger, so there's other
Yep.
places I can hide stuff, and
Yep.
so that's a thing that I know I do. But this was a very good commentary on what's real, what's not real, what goes on
Mhm.
behind the scenes. There's several things we find out that it all comes together at the end that
Yes.
are conspiring against her, basically. Like all of these things that she's curated now are crumbling. And she says that pretty
Yes.
early on. Like we find out
Mhm.
something that is wrong, and then we're like, oh. And at the end of the book, we see how that has come full circle because all of the storylines kind of, what do you call that word? Come together, basically. But you see
Mhm.
everything coming together, and you're like, okay, this is all making sense now. This is why she behaves this way. This is what's going
Yeah.
on. And it was very interesting to see. I don't know if this was a book I would reread.
I wouldn't reread it.
It was an interesting book. I won't say it's one of my favorites. If I had to pick a favorite for the month, this would not be it.
No.
But it was really interesting take on social commentary, basically, and
Yes.
what we put into our lives through social media. And it did make me look at things a little bit differently. Like what people always say, look behind the scenes of what's going on. And it
Mm.
is all curated. But reading that, it really made me rethink what does go on behind the scenes that we don't know about.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
but
I agree. But we do have some good news, guys. We're going to have a reading guide out for this
yes,
book. So your book club might want it.
there are a lot of characters, and
There are.
I've already come up with some really good questions to ask
Ooh,
for
good.
the discussion questions, because I think that this book is a full-on discussion. Like you could have a big discussion about social media in your life and religion in your life and what that looks like and pretending
Mhm.
and all of these
Well, I mean,
things.
we've already talked 46 minutes and we haven't even talked about spoilers. Like
Yes,
if we
there
could talk
if
about
we
spoilers, probably 30
this would
more
be a lot
minutes at
longer.
least. It'd be so much longer if we talked spoilers because, oh my gosh, like for real, there's so much more to this book that you got to
Yes.
read it and talk about it with your book club,
And
I guess.
that is definitely a big part of it, is because you can have really good discussions on this book. I think this would
Hmm.
be a very good book club pick. Even if it wasn't one of my favorites,
Yeah.
it made me think about things a lot. So
Hmm.
that's always a sign of a good book, if it makes you think about it and if you're still thinking about it after you've finished.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's, in my mind, that's a book that sticks with you, even if it wasn't your favorite. Like I said, I
Yeah.
gave this 3.5 stars, but it has made me think a lot, I guess.
Me too. And I just read it in, like I finished it like how many, like 15 hours ago.
You are the
So
queen of being able to read fast. So with our last episode with Kayla Olson, you had read her book in like 24 hours, basically. And
I
this
know.
one
I know.
was similar. I think you read it in 72. Like it was,
Something like that. It was real
and
fast,
that was just because you had
which
other things going on.
I did, which if you want to hear about those, you got to join our Patreon because we'll be recording that episode. And guys, there are many updates, many, many updates that from the online dating life that you're going to want to check out there. Just throwing that out there. That episode's not out yet. But if you haven't joined, you want to join and listen to the last few because well, we're just so fun to listen to. But then also
Exactly.
you want to get the background stories from there before I give you some updates, and I have them about updates from multiple of the people mentioned in those episodes. Plus, if you join at the $5 level, you also get this reading guide for this book for as not for free, but as a part of your package, or you can buy it for $4 on Etsy and only get that. So I'm just saying, like,
There's lots of options. And
there's lots of
I have
options.
updates too for our episode, our bonus episode. So it's just going to be exciting. It's going to be an
It is
exciting
going to be
time.
so. I know we're going to have multiple things that we did together to talk about, including something we're doing today. So, woohoo!
Very exciting. I feel it has been a crazy week, and I think I've had something every single day. So I am ready for tomorrow. I mean, it's Father's Day tomorrow as we're recording this.
Yeah.
But I'm ready for a day to sit on the couch and just sit in my pajamas. That sounds so nice right now.
Yes, you have more than earned it. I'm just saying.
Yes.
So,
this will be my third time driving to Dallas this week. And we live about an hour away from Dallas. So
yeah,
it's a lot.
so it is a lot.
We will talk about all those things. And then our next week's episode, not our bonus episode, is Literary Lately. And this is the quarter end as well. So we will be talking about... I
gotta prep for that.
We will be talking about books that come out in the third quarter of the year so that you can start putting those on your library hold list if that's what you do. I know I do. And start looking ahead of what's going to come. And that's going to be looking towards September.
Crazy.
Like July, August, September, which is just, it's hard to think about. We'll be back in school, and it's hard to think that summer is close to being over.
We're about to start. The day this drops is week 5 of summer starting, which is insane. But whatever. It's fine. We're fine. It's all good.
It's fine.
We'll survive. Whatever. All right. Well, I guess until next week.
Yes, until next week. Bye.
Right, bye. Thank you for listening to More Than a Book Club podcast. We are recorded and produced in McKinney, Texas.
Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.